Let's talk about the not so positive side of body positivity influencers. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I actually just did a video recently, my last video, about the body positivity movement, like why I felt like I had to walk away from it and why I thought it kind of went in the direction that it did and kind of led to things like skinny talk and stuff like that. If you want to know my thoughts on that, please check out my last video. But actually, after I filmed that video, Khloe Kardashian released her latest podcast video interviewing former, I guess, body positive, although I guess she doesn't call herself that, influencer Remi Bader, talking about her dramatic weight loss, and it stirred up a lot of controversy. And there were some topics that came up that I kind of wanted to talk about. Before I get into this, usual disclaimers. I know everybody hates my disclaimers, but like, I just gotta sum them up just for legality reasons. I don't know anybody in this video. I don't know Khloe or Remi. Personally, I am just basing my opinions on the public information and the public perception, and they're just my opinions, so take them or leave them. And also, if you would like to get to know my background and like my history with body image and body positivity and things like that, please check out my last video. And I actually have a lot of other videos on this channel. I have a playlist of kind of like body confidence, body image videos if you want to check those out. Because some of the topics that were covered in Khloe's latest podcast I did talk about in the last video, but I just wanted to touch on a few more. And I also want to state that while I know there are people that had a lot of really strong opinions about Remi Bader and this podcast episode with Khloe, I just want to state that I had not followed Remi, so I don't have like a history of following her or anything like that. I actually didn't know who she was. Nothing personal, she just didn't happen to be on my radar. So I feel like when I've kind of been like trying to sense the tone of like how people were responding to this podcast and stuff online, I do feel like people that did follow Remi are finding this podcast a lot more triggering and are having a lot more opinions about the podcast. Understandably so. As someone who has not followed her, I didn't have the same like immediate reaction. I only really watched it because I was seeing a lot of people talking about it online, so I'm coming at this from like not being a previous follower of hers. This is also the first podcast episode of Khloe's that I have watched in full. I haven't watched any of her other podcasts. I do have a video talking about Khloe and Khloe's sort of like a Khloe Kardashian analysis, I'll put it that way. Before I get into the Remi stuff, I just kind of want to make a few notes. If you go back to the video analysis I did of Khloe Kardashian, it's interesting because people love to come to me and be like, you don't have a PhD, what are your qualifications? How can you analyze people and stuff like that? I did that video about Khloe and my analysis of Khloe and sort of a lot of her like mental health based on her public persona, and I just want to point out that after I did that video, there was an episode of The Kardashians on Hulu where Khloe talked about going to therapy and talked about some of her issues, and checkmark, a lot of the things I said in that video were absolutely dead on from her therapist and coming out of Khloe's own mouth. So for people that want to say that I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not usually wrong about this stuff. So I just want to put it that way. I also want to state that, I mean, I had no interest in watching Khloe's podcast. I don't watch a lot of podcasts. There aren't that many podcasts that I watch consistently. Usually it's just if like there's one that really catches my interest or somebody that I kind of want to hear interviewed or something like that. Like, I don't tend to watch a lot of podcasts like consistently. That said, I had really no interest in watching Khloe's podcast, especially because Khloe got so mad on her show for her mom suggesting she do a podcast, and then somebody else suggested Khloe should do a podcast, and then all of a sudden she wanted to do it, and I was just like, I kind of feel like, this is off topic from Remi, but it's just an analysis of Khloe's podcast. While this is the only one I've watched, it really does feel like Khloe's mailing it in. Even like Khloe's promotional stuff, and I don't watch a ton of podcasts, but all the ones that I watch that are pretty successful, like the person who's the podcast host like reads the ad content or reads like the sponsored content, and the fact that Khloe, like, it's just her image on the sponsored content and like somebody else is like reading the promos for like the sponsored ads and stuff, I'm like, oh my god, she can't even read her own sponsored content. Like, and it's like pre-recorded, so to me, she's mailing it in. And that does actually go to a little bit of an analysis I want to do about like Khloe and her body image and presentation and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Khloe, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Remi. But I just want to say, like, Khloe's podcasting style and stuff, like, I mean, and this is no hate on Khloe, like, Khloe has been through a lot, and I mentioned this in other videos. I think Khloe has gotten more hate and criticism in the media than like anyone else in her family, especially considering like she hasn't done nearly as many things wrong as a lot of the other people in her family. So like, I understand like Khloe's issues and her hesitation with how she's presented in the media, and I understand her body image issues. I think she's gotten way more body shame than like anyone else in her family. That said, it's interesting because Khloe did bring up an interesting topic in this podcast with Remi about the idea that people will judge Khloe for changing and how like you're supposed to change and you're supposed to grow and evolve, and that's absolutely true. Like, I firmly believe that. But people don't all have to like the changes that you've made. Now, should they shame and judge you? No, but like not everybody is gonna go along with those changes, and that's fine too. It is interesting how Khloe will make comments. She even said at one point in the podcast that like when she was bigger, she was much sassier. I think that's what people miss about her. When people say she's changed, Khloe was way more outspoken. She was way more like, I'm not gonna take any crap from anyone. She was way more sassy, and I think that's what people really liked about her. And then the fact that she lost the weight, but she also lost that part of her personality, and it's her choice. And I also think too, with everything she went through like very publicly with, you know, her marriage to Lamar and that split and how difficult that was, and you know, all of her drama with Tristan and becoming a mom, and like, and her body changing and people treating her differently, and like her changing is totally understandable. That said, there were aspects of Khloe's personality that people really loved and really connected to that aren't still there, and it's totally understandable why she would change and evolve, and if that's what she wants to do, that's fine. But I think it's also okay for people to miss parts of you that they really connected to from your old self. And especially, and I understand there's a lot of people who are saying that people have these like weird parasocial relationships with like influencers and celebrities, and maybe that's true, but people look to these celebrities and they're often drawn to celebrities that they connect to on some level and stuff. And so, you know, when you feel like you connect to a certain celebrity because of something like a personality trait or, you know, something about their image or something, and then that changes, it's natural for people to feel like they need to sort of mourn the loss of that person that they used to look up to, or that person that they used to see as a role model or as inspiration or something like that. Like, that's normal. I don't think it's a justification for shaming anybody, because it's everybody's individual choice, like how they grow and change. But I also think it's a valid conversation to have about like, okay, you can change and you can grow, and like hopefully the changes are positive, but you know, not everybody is going to take to those changes. Not everybody's going to want to, you know, be in your life or accept you in that way. It's also one of the criticisms I've seen of people talking about Remi going on Khloe's podcast to like announce her weight loss surgery and to come forward talking about like how she had lost the weight, because apparently she had been hiding that or not talking about it or whatever. Again, I wasn't following her, so I don't really know the whole backstory. A lot of people have said that they felt like Remi going on a Kardashians podcast to talk about this, seeing as though the Kardashians have been perpetuators of a ridiculous and unrealistic beauty standard for, you know, over a decade now, you know, was very tone deaf. To a certain extent, I get it, because Khloe has been very vocal about body changes and body image and things like that. But Khloe has also given into the beauty standard. She's given into the pressure. I think there's a common misconception that a lot of people have that when somebody is bigger and then they lose weight, everybody doesn't like them, or they decide that they don't like them because they're jealous. And are there some people who are struggling to lose weight who see someone who achieves it and does feel jealous of them? Yes, that happens. Of course it does. That's not the only reason why people have an issue with somebody deciding to lose a lot of weight. For one, and the thing that I don't think that we really talk about very much, is that there are some people who lose a lot of weight and their personality either changes or comes out, and you either discover that they're not a good person, or their personality has changed and they're just not likable, you know? And some people lose weight and they still feel like the same person and they still feel likable. Again, people are gonna change, but not everybody changes for the better, and weight loss doesn't always change people for the better. I stand by the fact that a lot of the girls on Skinny Talk are so mean because they're hungry. And frankly, I know when I was starving myself, like, and I got hangry, like my ex-husband used to tell me that I was like the living embodiment of a Snickers commercial. Like, I was usually like a very sweet person, but like I would start getting like really mean, and then he would give me food and all of a sudden I'd be the nicest person again. And it was like, it was because I was getting so hangry. Like I just couldn't handle it. Like I was hungry and angry, and like I wouldn't admit that to myself because I was trying to convince myself I wasn't. And he would all of a sudden be like, why are you being so mean? Like you're not a mean person. Like where did this come from? And then once I would eat something, I would be like sweet as pie again, and he would be like, oh, okay, so that's what it is. I just need to feed you when you're mean, right? That relationship didn't last for other reasons, but that's a whole other conversation. But again, when people lose weight, the world sees them differently, they get treated differently, and some people are just not nice people, and maybe they were never nice people and it was just hidden before or whatever. And I'm not saying that jealousy doesn't factor into it, but like people do change, not always for the better. So, you know, that's something I think we need to factor in when it comes to people with weight loss. One of the things that Khloe brought up, and you know, she was talking about it in terms of like Remi, who a lot of people believe like wasn't fully being honest about how she lost the weight and is now admitting she did weight loss surgery. People have been saying she denied it in the past. I think she's saying she just didn't tell people, and a lot of people are feeling misled. I'll get into that conversation in a minute, but Khloe talked about her experience with losing weight, and when she says, oh, it was diet and exercise, and people are like, no, you're lying. And it's just like, well, I told you how I'm losing the weight and now you don't believe me. That's a really popular, like, especially celebrity go-to, because let's be real, while I firmly believe that Khloe does work out, she looks like she works out. I get, like she even said in the podcast, like you don't just build muscle through surgery or something. Like I believe that Khloe works out. I believe that Khloe has, you know, gotten into fitness. Actually, when I was going through my divorce and she wrote her book that she talked about, oh my God, I forget the name of the book. I'm forgetting it right now. But like she wrote her book and she was talking about using workouts as her therapy to get through her divorce. Like I very much use my workouts as therapy to get through my divorce. Like I really connected with Khloe in that way. So I get it. I also know that sometimes using exercise as therapy to get through stuff, it can be good and it can also go too far. I know I for sure took it too far in certain instances, but I also think it was helpful in other instances, and I can actually do a video going into that in more depth if you'd like me to talk about that, and like my relationship with exercise and things like that. Like if you want me to get into that, I will love to do a video about that. I do believe that Khloe works out. I believe she probably works out really well. I do think, and this is very typical celebrity stuff, so I'm not just putting this on Khloe, but Khloe has on her show been a little weird when she talks about her relationship with food. Sometimes she makes it sound like she doesn't eat healthy, sometimes she makes it sound like she does. Like I do feel like she's been a little bit weird about that instance. On the one hand, I get like how she eats is how she eats. I do believe that Khloe has actually worked out for sure. Khloe didn't get the body that she has just through workouts. Yeah, like it's obvious, okay? You can tell by the way her body has changed. You can tell by the shape of her body, like that it was not just workouts. And the fact that she's got this podcast, she has this influencer who is admitting to the world that she has lost weight through weight loss surgery. And now you have Khloe talking about how people have judged her when she's been honest about her weight loss, when she clearly has not been fully honest about her weight loss. Her body changes. There's no way, as she implied, that the only surgery she's had done is her nose. This has always been my frustration with the fitness industry, is that I understand fitness people wanting to motivate people to work out and be healthy. I love fitness. I love working out. I work out all the time. I love it. I've loved it to the point where I've loved it too much and overdone it drastically. Like, I'm not discouraging anyone from being active. I think being active is great. I think finding a fitness program that works for you and that feels good, like I'm all for that. The problem is when you have these, whether they be specifically like fitness influencers or just celebrities in general that get really fit, when they don't fully disclose how they got there. And some of it is exercise, but some of it becomes drugs, pharmaceuticals, steroids, surgeries, things like that. And they aren't fully open about how they get there. And they're selling people that you can get their results from exercise. Will exercise make you a better person, a stronger person, a healthier person? Yes. But if you're selling somebody on, I exercise and look at me and look how good I look, if how you look is not something that is attainable through exercise, yeah, you might motivate people to work out initially because people want to look like you. But when people realize that they aren't going to look like you because you didn't get that way through exercise, or even just exercise and diet, that you got that way through other means, people are going to get discouraged and they're going to give up because they're going to be like, well, I couldn't do it. There's obviously something wrong with me. I'm broken. Why bother show up? When in reality, you shouldn't even be showing up to work out just to look a certain way or fit a certain body image anyway. You should be working out for your health and because it makes you feel good. But unfortunately, a lot of these celebrities and these influencers and stuff, they have people chasing something through fitness that isn't attainable through fitness, and it just sets people up for failure. And I say this as somebody, I spent, I'd say, my teen years and probably all my 20s, even a little bit into my 30s. I would read every celebrity workout plan. I would do every celebrity workout. I would do every celebrity diet. I would follow celebrity diet plans. I would try to copy what everybody else was doing. Then when I realized I couldn't look like the way the celebrities looked, I would get discouraged and give up. The reality was they didn't get there doing those means alone. Did they do those things? Some of them maybe. Some of the diet plans, some of the fitness plans might be made up, some of them might be real, who knows? But they didn't get there through those means. They got there through other means. The idea that they're selling everybody on this idea that you can get there through diet and fitness alone, when they didn't actually do that, and then people try to do that and then they can't achieve it, they end up feeling worse about themselves because they're like, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I achieve that thing that they managed to achieve? And there's also the factor that for some of us, our bodies aren't meant to look that way. I mean, you know, my body is never gonna look pear-shaped because I'm not pear-shaped. I'm very top-heavy. I could work out and do the same workouts, the same fitness plan, eat the same diet as somebody who's pear-shaped, as somebody who's smaller on top, bigger on the bottom. We can do the same fitness plan. I might even work out harder than them. I'm not gonna look like them because I'm not pear-shaped. I'm top-heavy. I got nothing on the bottom and I'm all top. If I work out the same way as somebody who's like all bottom and no top, we're gonna look different. Our bodies are gonna look different. It doesn't mean that one of us is in better shape than the other. It doesn't mean that the workouts weren't effective. It doesn't mean that we aren't, you know, both healthy or anything like that. What that means is our bodies are not meant to look the same. But if I see a girl, whatever, maybe she started out with a small butt and she's working out and she's in the gym and she decides to get a BBL, but she's still working out, but like I try to do the same workouts that she did to try to build a butt or try to get a bigger butt or a stronger glutes or whatever, like I might get stronger glutes. I might actually achieve building muscle. Like I might do all those things. I'm not gonna look like she did because I didn't get the BBL. You know, I mean, it's just a different thing. I say it all the time. I said this in my last video and I'm trying not to repeat myself, but like, it's like if I sold somebody a chest workout routine and marketed it to girls who were like A-cups and was like, hey, this is the chest workout that I do and this is the diet plan I have, and like, are you gonna expect them to walk out with G-cups? No, because they're not genetically predisposed to that. Unless they have surgery, they're not gonna grow that much because this is how I am naturally, but not everybody is this way naturally, and be grateful if you're not, because believe me, it involves a lot of back pain, let me just tell you. So I was a little frustrated with the way that Khloe was kind of wording this in the interview, because she's making it sound like, well, I told you what I did and you just didn't believe me. It's like, well, because we have eyes and we know that that's not all you did to get the look that you have. Like, we know that. That doesn't mean that she didn't put in work. It doesn't mean that she didn't work out. It doesn't mean that she didn't actually, you know, achieve something, but we know that she didn't do everything that she did to get the body she has in the gym, and she's still denying it and trying to make it seem as if what she did is achievable for everybody when we know that it's not, you know, because you would not lose all of the body fat around your waist and get your waist that cut and chiseled and yet your butt hasn't gotten any smaller, like at all. Like, I've seen the workouts that she does. I'm sure she's built muscle. She isn't doing workouts that are like gonna grow her butt the size that her butt still is. Like, she clearly had work done. Like, we know she had work done. It's obvious to everybody. She's just still denying it. I do feel for Khloe when she talked about being treated so differently than her sisters on photo shoots and stuff, because like, I mean, I witnessed it. I remember that time period and how awful it was to watch, that people were tearing her apart. I do like the fact that in this particular podcast episode, Khloe finally admits that she was not that big, because Khloe was not that big. Khloe was not obese. I don't even think I would even consider her overweight for her height or for her size. She just wasn't skinny. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, Khloe was never at a weight that was dangerous for her health. Khloe was just bigger than what celebrities are expected to be. But Khloe is also a lot taller than her sisters. I mean, she's the same height as Kendall, but she's a lot taller than Kim and Kourtney. So of course she's gonna be a bigger girl. Like, that's just natural. She's supposed to weigh more than them because how much you weigh is very much dependent on your height. But I do like the fact that Khloe finally admitted that she was not that big, because the way she talks about herself a lot, like on her show and stuff, makes it sound like Khloe thinks that she was enormous, and she never was. She was always gonna feel bigger than Kim and Kourtney because she's so much taller. I mean, that's just the reality of things. I've been seeing a lot of really strong reactions to my last video that I posted. It was very positive on YouTube, but I've heard a lot of like conflicting opinions about some of my opinions about body positivity and stuff on TikTok when I've shared some clips of my last YouTube video. And I'm realizing how deeply ingrained so much of this obsession with thinness is in our society. Something that I think a lot of people don't want to admit is that in our modern society, thinness for women is considered the beauty ideal. And I know people are going to argue, oh no, it's curvy, or no, it's this, whatever. Thinness has always been a standard of the beauty ideal. There tends to be a very, very narrow, literally physically narrow range of what is considered the acceptable beauty standard. So there are people who are a completely normal, healthy body size that feel that they are too big to fit the beauty standard. I'm not talking about people who are actually in a situation where their weight is such that it's negatively affecting their health. I'm talking about people who are in a completely normal, healthy weight range. They just aren't considered thin. Khloe would be one of them, right? She was never in like an unhealthy weight range. She was just not as thin as the celebrity beauty standard, especially when she originally got popular in like the early 2000s. Because I would say, like, I mean, the 80s I'm sure were bad. I experienced more of the body image stuff in the 90s, which was the era of like the heroin chic supermodel and stuff. I used to say all the time that I'm gonna send Kate Moss my therapy bills. And ironically that she was the model for heroin chic, and it came out that she actually had a coke problem. Go figure. Shocking, right? I know. But the early 2000s too were also like a big deal. Having like your rib cage stick out was actually like a sign of beauty or something. Like, this insanely thin beauty standard has been around for a while. We kind of moved away from it, and as I talked about in previous videos, I do believe that the media manipulated the body positivity movement to make it seem like it was promoting obesity and to basically squash it so that we could go back to the super skinny, like dangerously skinny beauty standard. But when you saw celebrities that weren't super skinny, I think a lot of people related to them because it felt like a rebellion. Like, not fitting the beauty standard or being a representation of something that wasn't the mainstream beauty standard, it feels like a rebellion. Like and I think that's why when you saw, like, say for example, a celebrity like Khloe when she first got famous, you know, who was like bigger than her sisters. She was bigger than the mainstream beauty standard. And a lot of people took to her, part because of her personality, her like no nonsense, like funny, say what's on her mind, like sassy personality, but also her body felt like it was a rebellion against the mainstream beauty standard. Now, she got a lot of criticism for that, but the people who loved her for that. And I mean, you know, I'm not like promoting Lizzo or anything. I do think that Lizzo was probably in a dangerous weight range, although if you look at her performances, she clearly had some cardiovascular ability, so I don't think she was that far off. But like, yeah, she was overweight, and she did promote some unhealthy eating habits and stuff with some of her ads and things like that. So whatever, like, I'm not justifying like being, you know, overweight, or please don't come for me with the glorifying obesity kind of thing, because I think when we throw out glorifying obesity, you're just using it as a distraction and someone tries to warn you about starvation diets and things like that. But like, not fitting the mainstream beauty standard feels like a rebellion. So when somebody like Khloe Kardashian, Lizzo, this Remi Bader influencer, they existed outside of the mainstream beauty standard at one point in time. So people who were outside of the mainstream beauty standard were like, oh, finally, somebody who isn't stick thin skinny is actually being seen, is being witnessed, is not just told to hide in the background. And a lot of people related in that way. And then when they changed, and I'm not saying like in Remi's case, it sounded like, you know, she had some medical issues. Lizzo, I'm not really sure, but I do think that she seemed to be outside of a healthy weight range. I mean, I don't know her actual medical situation, so I'm not going to make assumptions, but you know, she was promoting some pretty unhealthy eating habits as far as I can tell. Khloe was never in a dangerous weight range, let's be real. But when these women decided to change their bodies and to lose the weight, when people got upset, there were a lot of people that jumped to jealousy. And are there some people that were maybe jealous because maybe they wish that they could lose the weight too and they haven't done it yet, so they're going to jump to jealousy? Maybe. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But a lot of people got upset because it felt like these people who were the rebels, the people who were like, oh, I'm not gonna conform to this beauty standard that has been put on us, of this thing that we have to achieve, of this look that we have to have. It felt like the rebels were letting us down. It felt like the people who were advocates of not fitting the mainstream beauty standard were now just conforming to the mainstream beauty standard. It's gonna feel like they're letting us down. I mean, and it's not necessarily their responsibility to be the rebels. It's not their, I mean, it's their choice whether they want to be or not. But it's also gonna feel disappointing to people who want to believe that people can be loved, that people can be seen as beautiful, that people can be successful in life if they don't fit the mainstream beauty standard. So when people then give in and conform, it does feel like people are being let down. So I think people often jump to the jealousy thing, and I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but like at the end of the day, it's not just jealousy. It's often the idea that like, I mean, I kind of felt that about Adele a little bit. And like, you know, I don't really know Adele's medical situation or anything like that, but it did feel like Adele was just this like beautiful woman. And yes, she was a bigger girl, but like she had the voice and she was gorgeous at every weight. And it really did feel like, oh my God, here's this woman who like, we can see her as this woman who's a big, beautiful woman with this amazing voice. And it's not just about her physical beauty, although she's always been gorgeous, but it's about her talent and it's about her music. And then when she lost the weight, it really did, and I mean, I don't dislike her for it, or I'm not like mad at her for doing it, but it does feel a little bit like, oh, she's just giving in and conforming to the beauty standard, and now it's all about her weight again, when at a certain point it was about her music. I mean, again, her choice. Like, it's not my right to tell her what she should or shouldn't do, or anybody else's right to tell her what she should and shouldn't do, but it does feel conflicting. I'm not gonna lie, because as someone who, like, my body is not represented in the mainstream media at all. I mean, the closest thing to my body type I see in the mainstream media is like Sherry Shepherd, even though I'm a lot taller than she is, but as somebody who's very top heavy. And even she's talked about having breast reductions and stuff like that. So like, as someone who like, I don't see myself represented in the media ever. And I know people are always shocked by that because they're like, oh, but you have blonde hair and stuff, and you know, blonde hair and boobs. And it's like, well, boobs in the media are like, D cup is considered big. Like, that's not me. And I gotta be honest with you, like, even in Khloe's situation, like, Khloe has changed. Her personality has changed, like I said. And, you know, she felt like this woman who was rebelling against the beauty industry, and it ended up feeling like she conformed. And like, you know, her choice to do, like, it's completely her choice. You know, I think a lot of people miss the old Khloe, and I think it's valid that the person that you connected with, the celebrity, the public figure that you connected with, when they change, it's natural for people to feel some way about it, you know? I don't justify like shaming or anything, but I did think it was interesting. Khloe and Remi were talking about going on diets in childhood, and like I talked about in my other video, like I tried my first fad diet at 8 years old. I was a lifetime member of Weight Watchers at age 11, and like, it's interesting how Remi made the comment that she had done diets with her mom when she was young, and she's like, that's just how it happened. And Khloe's like, yeah, I don't think people realize like how common that was, like, and kind of fluffed it off. And I'm like, I feel like that needs to be more of a conversation that we talk about like children going on diets. Because while, you know, I'm not upset with my mom for what happened, because I really do feel like she was doing the best that she could. Starting somebody so young on diets really does set people up for really disordered eating. And I'll tell you little bit about my experience. My mother brought me to Weight Watchers when I was, I want to say 10. Before you judge her for doing that, there were some different reasons why she did that. I had a weight problem. Wasn't completely out of control, but was getting bad. And my father had a weight problem. He had very disordered eating, which is where I learned it from. My mother has never had a weight problem, but my mother was in this situation where she had a husband and a daughter who were struggling with their weight, and she had no clue how to deal with it. So she ended up signing up for Weight Watchers, but like she couldn't do it on her own because she wasn't in an overweight weight range, and you have to be considered overweight in order to actually join Weight Watchers, which is a valid thing. They don't want people joining. I don't know how it is now, but back then they didn't want people joining that were just trying to do it to like get underweight. My dad wasn't going to sign up for it because he wasn't gonna go through the process of doing it. Like he was just gonna eat whatever my mother fed him, so like he didn't care. So my mother essentially like used me to sign up because like I qualified because I was considered overweight, and then my mother could go to the meetings because I was too young to go without a chaperone, right? So like I understand like why she did it, and I think she was just kind of like lost and confused and didn't really know what to do. I do find it really fascinating that when I joined Weight Watchers initially, I was 10 years old, and this is before they had their famous point system. It was a little bit more like you were supposed to have, like it was a little bit more food pyramid like you had like a certain number of servings of protein, a certain number of servings of carbohydrates, a certain number of servings of fats, and like that kind of thing. Like you were calculating your servings, your serving sizes of the different food groups. And they had 3 different plans at that point in time. They had the men's, the women's, and the child. I remember like getting the plan. You know, you got the information of all of them, but we started out with my mother putting me on the child's plan because I was 10, so obviously I was a child. And we got home, and the child's plan, you eat a lot of food because you're growing, you're developing, and you tend to be hungry, you tend to be more active. It was actually more food than what I had been eating previously. So my mother freaked out and was like, okay, you're never gonna lose weight if you're eating more food. So she went to the people at Weight Watchers at the meetings we were going to, and because this is literally before online was a thing, went to them and was like, okay, she's never gonna lose weight if she's eating this much food. So they agreed with my mom and put me on the women's plan. I was 10. I was 10 years old, and they're like, okay, well, we'll treat her like she's a full-grown woman and put her on the women's plan. In hindsight, crazy. In hindsight, I literally had not even started my menstrual cycle yet. Like, you know, it's like, and I get it. Like, my mom was operating on like, you know, her own beliefs. I don't really blame her. It kind of boggles my mind that like people at Weight Watchers would actually go along with that like idea of like, okay, we're gonna treat this child like she's a full-grown woman. Yeah, I kind of thought it was interesting how in the podcast with Remi and Khloe, when they touched on the idea of going on diets as kids, like they kind of fluffed it off like, oh, that was just normal. Like people don't realize it was normal back then. I don't think that, I feel like that needed a moment of like, let's actually focus on like how unhealthy that was. More often than not, the people that go on these like diets, especially at a young age, they don't end up thinner and healthier as they get older. Like it's not setting them up for good eating habits. It's usually setting them up for very disordered eating. And that's one of the things that frustrates me like with like the skinny talk and the everything that people want to talk about is like, oh, it's just teaching you healthy eating habits. Or like, I just want to be skinny. Like, why is that a problem? People don't realize, and like, I've had to learn this. I've had to learn this lesson the hard way several times in my life. Starving yourself to thinness, yes, it will get you thin and you might be able to keep it off for a while. Eventually that starvation is going to catch up with you, and statistically speaking, you're more likely to gain even more weight and end up bigger than you were when you started the starvation diet. If you look into the research on the Biggest Loser TV show, and the fact that the majority of the people on that show that lost like a significant amount of weight all ended up bigger than they were when they started on the show. Which actually gets into another topic that Remi mentioned, and I do feel like she kind of, Remi and Khloe are talking about like the mental health aspect of losing weight, and I'm sorry, but like, and I say this with so much love when I talk about Khloe, Khloe really does not have any business talking to people about mental health. Like, she really doesn't. Like, if you look at her life and the choices that she's made and the way that she's living her life, like, I want Khloe to get healing. I hope she does get healing. Khloe has a long way to go. So the idea that she's actually talking to people about like how to deal with body image issues and stuff is like really kind of crazy, because she's clearly not dealt with her body image issues. One of my issues about this podcast, and maybe if I had followed Remi for longer, if I was a follower of hers, and maybe this podcast was designed for people who already follow Remi, although I'm gonna guess that Remi probably didn't have as big a following as the Kardashians, so I'm guessing that like this was kind of like Khloe introducing Remi to her audience as opposed to Remi's audience coming to Khloe's podcast, although I'm sure there was some of both. One thing I will say about this podcast, which I actually did see a lot of comments, like even on the YouTube video, I watched it on YouTube, a lot of people were like, okay, Khloe needed to introduce this person. Like, I felt like I had no idea who Remi was, and a lot of people were like, well, just Google her, and I did Google her, and like, I don't have the time to sit there and do all kinds of research about who she was, and I tried finding out information about her, and it was actually like not that easy. And as someone who wasn't following her, like, I found this podcast to be very confusing. Like, the timelines were confusing, the information was confusing about some of the stuff. Like, I just found this podcast to be not very informative for somebody who wasn't familiar with Remi. And maybe if you are familiar with her and you have been following her, maybe you can let me know if you actually felt like this podcast summed up the reality of her situation. I felt like a lot of it just got really confusing as far as like timelines and what was happening and what she knew when, and like I found that very confusing. Remi talking about her social media following and stuff was getting really confusing. It's my understanding that Remi was a social media influencer who ended up, I guess she was a bigger girl, but then she ended up gaining a lot of weight on social media, and that's where she built her following. And people saw her as a representation of like a curvy woman in the body positivity movement, although she makes it sound like that she never really felt like she was that body positive. According to her in this podcast, she was always open about struggling with her body and things like that. I've heard mixed opinions about that. Being someone who didn't follow her before, I can't really comment on that because I don't really know what her message was or her platform was. I do find it concerning though. I understand her not wanting to share everything about her weight loss surgery while she was in it and wanting to like wait until she'd moved past it. I get that. For me, I know like I was sharing a lot of body image stuff on social media. I talked about this in my last video. When I decided I really wanted to heal my relationship with food and I knew my body was going to change, I stopped showing my full body on social media, and I went in a different direction with my content and started talking about different things because I felt like I know how much I got caught up in Fitspo stuff, in the celebrity like workout diet plans, like, and I know how much I tried to emulate those people. And even though like I didn't have as big a following as Remi with like millions of followers, but I did have a pretty big following on Instagram, you know, and I had loyal followers here on YouTube. I didn't want to like promote what I was doing because I didn't really know what I was doing. Like I went into it with information, and I went into it trusting myself, and I went into it with the best of intentions for myself. But I also, part of the process for me was to stop listening to like outsiders and to stop listening to the Fitspos, the celebrity content, or, you know, all the different mixed messages they have about health and stuff like online, and just to learn to listen to myself and my body. Because I knew I needed to heal that part of myself, I chose to keep that journey off social media. I'm actually really feeling called to share more of it now, which is why I'm doing more videos about body image and things like that. Like I'm feeling called to talk about it more. I'm hoping to make more videos like this, or more videos about how I healed a lot of my stuff. So hopefully that's something that you guys want to see. But I also understand like not wanting to talk about it while you're in it. I also was very careful though to not mislead anyone, and to not share like that I was doing something that I wasn't really doing. Like I was very, very cautious about sharing anything when it came to that topic. I just went in a totally different direction with my content. Some people came with me, some people didn't. I've gained some followers along the way. It happens. Like people shift content. I don't judge anybody for shifting content, including Remi. Although when you are an influencer and you do shift your content, which you have every right to do, not everybody's gonna follow you. Not everybody has to like the direction that you're going in. Not everybody will. You might gain some new followers. You might lose some followers. That's what happens. People are going to be vocal about being upset about it. Now, should people be like angry and judge and shame you for it? No. People are, because that's unfortunately human nature, but they shouldn't. But at the end of the day, like people are going to have opinions because people feel invested in you. Like I've seen people say like, you know, like Remi as a person has every right to do what she wants with her body. Remi as a brand is business. And people who felt like they invested in her business are gonna have opinions about it. You know, I never had millions of followers. I haven't made millions of dollars on social media. I would love to, but I don't currently. But I still have always felt a responsibility to being authentic online to anybody who does follow me. So many influencers that have millions of followers, that make millions of dollars, it ends up coming out that they're not authentic. And I gotta be honest with you, from my perspective of having been an influencer for like over a decade now, seeing the really inauthentic influencers get really successful and then the truth comes out about them, knowing how much like I value authenticity and knowing that there are so many influencers who are truly authentic people who don't end up making millions of dollars, who don't end up with this success. Like, it breaks my heart and it frustrates me to no end that it's the people who are inauthentic that people tend to like boost to the top. And then when they find out they're inauthentic, they get mad. It's like, well, those are the people that you push to the top. I actually could make a whole video about that, and I might actually in the future. I can understand why Remi would not want to share everything about what she was doing, especially while she was going through it, because again, she wanted to be mindful of her influence on people. I would also say that when you get to be a celebrity or you get to be an influencer and you are making millions of dollars from your audience, you do have a responsibility to your audience. That comes with the territory of making millions of dollars as a public figure. I did see a few videos that Remi posted that kind of came up on my feed like while I was sort of researching this podcast, and it did feel a little bit like eating bad, being bigger is bad, you know, and being skinny is good, being thin is good. Like, it did give off that vibe, and maybe that is what she's feeling now, and that is what it is. Especially with how she talked about how difficult the surgery is, how difficult the recovery was. That did feel uncomfortable. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it did feel uncomfortable to then see that she's promoting this thinner is so much better when it's like, okay, but you did some really dangerous things to get to that thinness. And I say this all the time, like, Remi talked a lot about like having conversations with her surgeon, but then throughout the podcast there was a lot of back and forth about like it seemed like at some points the surgeon like disclosed a lot of information and was like, okay, no, I will not do this surgery because I don't think that this surgery will be good for you in the long run and stuff. But then there were also moments that Remi would talk about like her post-surgery and like, well, this wasn't told to me before and things like that. So it felt really conflicting to me. I know that especially with women, when it comes to the medical community and the pharmaceutical industry, women are very often not given informed consent. And it's just not just with weight loss, but with anything. So when people talk about weight loss surgeries, GLP-1s, but even birth control and things like that, like, women are not given complete informed consent on a lot of these things in most areas of the medical industry. So when I hear things about women like, oh, I didn't know this like before I had the surgery, or I didn't know this before I took the medication, I'm like, okay, then you didn't actually consent to doing this because you weren't given all the information. It's interesting because like Remi did say in the podcast that there's a lot of work involved post-surgery, and you know that she has to have a very specific diet plan, that she has to take these medications and supplements and everything so she doesn't get sick, and she has to have this really strict lifestyle or else she's gonna get sick. Well, that doesn't really necessarily line up with the content that she seems to be creating, that like life is so much better thinner. And the reality is, if you can stick to that strict diet plan post-surgery long term, you probably didn't need the surgery to begin with. I know it's probably controversial to say, but I kind of get it. Like, I know there's just some people who feel like there's just no other option. Maybe this is something I just shouldn't say, but I'm just gonna say it anyway. As someone who has lost weight and gained weight and done different things to lose weight, as someone who I've spent the last, like, I would say 5 years right now, like doing a lot of like healing work, inner work. I have healed my binge eating. I have healed my food noise. This is the first time in my life I've ever not had food noise, and I've done all that on my own. Like, that was all within me. And like, I'm not all that special. Like, it's within you too. When I hear people that do the weight loss surgeries or do the drugs or things like that, that are bragging about those things and how it changed their life, it's like, those are band-aids. They're just band-aids on the problem. A lot of people do those things and they override those impulses and they end up right back where they started, because there's a reason why you were overweight to begin with. And I guarantee you it was not just lack of discipline, which is what everybody tries to tell you. There's another issue going on. And if you don't work on that stuff, it doesn't matter what you do, you're gonna end up right back in the same place because you haven't healed the reason why you had the weight problem in the first place. And no, it is not just because you ate too much because you were undisciplined. I'm gonna tell you right now, I am one of the most disciplined people you will ever meet. Like, my discipline sometimes shocks even me, and I've struggled to keep weight off my whole life. Not because I wasn't disciplined, not because I didn't do the work, but because I had other issues that were blocking me from losing weight. They had other issues that were overriding my discipline, and I could stay disciplined in that area for so long, and then I would fall off the wagon because I wasn't dealing with the actual issues that I had to deal with. I have videos on here talking about some of those things, like women gaining weight as a masculine shield, and some of those issues, and like why women can't lose weight and stuff like that. So I go into those much deeper in those videos, or some of my more popular videos, so I highly suggest you check those out. I know people don't want to hear this, but honestly, I truly believe that all of these, like GLP-1, Ozempic, Mozana, whatever the hell those things are, the weight loss surgeries, everything, I really do believe it's just the pharmaceutical companies in the medical industry that just wanted in on the trillion-dollar industry that is the diet and fitness industry, and they just want to make a pile of money off of it. It's no different than like the appetite suppressants they used to, or maybe even still sell in the, you know, drugstores and things like that, like all the over-the-counter stuff that they used to push on people, appetite suppressants. I took a diet pill when I was like a teenager that ended up getting recalled because it was like over-the-counter speed. I literally took 2 pills. Like, it was supposed to take one, like one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and by the evening my entire body was shaking. Like, I was literally like shaking from head to toe. Like, this kind of stuff is no different, and people are gonna have long-term side effects to this. And again, like Remi mentioned at one point something about her health journey, and then doing this surgery and having so many side effects in this surgery, and the recovery time being so long, and going through all these challenges and all these struggles, and everything she has to do now as far as being on such a strict diet and the medications and the pills. That's not my version of health at all. And maybe she is healthier because she has fewer back problems, her blood work is better, like more power to her. I hope she's healthy, and I hope she stays healthy. This was a very unhealthy way of achieving this goal. Her choice, but I don't want to see this become a trend, because honestly, it's within you. And I know that Remi has said she tried everything, she tried all these things, but I think she just wasn't ready. I think she just wasn't ready to face the stuff. And it does really feel like, even in just the limited content that I've seen of her, and I wish her well and I hope she's good, I really do, but it does really feel like she has a lot of healing to do on the inside. And I hope she does it. I really do. It's interesting how Remi did mention that she tried Ozempic and it didn't work well for her. Apparently she got a lot of hate and criticism for saying that it didn't work for her. People get really triggered by that stuff, and I'm always leery when people get really triggered by things like that, because the trigger to me is usually like an indication that like there's a problem there. And I think, honestly, I think the pharmaceutical industries know that women will do anything to be thin. Literally anything. Like they don't care. I mean, and I think they're exploiting that. And they have people so triggered that if anybody questions it, they just lose their minds. And I think it's just really dangerous. We're going down a really dangerous path here, and it's really scary to see. So this video is probably already really long, and I really have just scratched the surface of some of the things I want to talk about. Remi did talk a lot in this podcast interview about a relationship breakup and going through a public breakup and how that affects your body image and things like that. And I really want to get into like dating and body image and relationships and body image and stuff like that. I feel like I want to do like a whole video on that though, because I have a lot of thoughts as somebody who's dated at like various body sizes. So, and I have talked about that in other videos, but I want to do a video just specifically about that. If you want to see that, let me know, but I'm definitely going to work on filming that, because I really want to do more videos and more content on body image and healing your body, and like healing your relationship with your body and getting healthy, and our twisted relationship with health in our society. So yeah, because I think I feel like I've learned so much from my body image journey. I'm still learning, I'm still evolving. I'm not the weight that I think is ideal for me right now, but I'm also like not suffering anymore. I literally got on a scale for the first time in like months, and I'm down a significant amount of weight, and I haven't even, I don't want to say I haven't tried, but like I haven't done anything to torture myself. I've been feeling good. Like I hydrate with pretty glasses. This is actually on my TikTok shop. If you guys want to check me out on TikTok, I'm actually a TikTok affiliate now. I have a little bit of hibiscus tea, but this is mostly water. I've healed my food noise. I'm working out in ways that I love. Like I'm feeling so good. Weight loss has been like an amazing benefit from it, and I really want to talk more about that. So I'm hoping that you guys like that direction with my content. I'm just scratching the surface on this. I know I talked a little bit more about Khloe than Remi, but I'm more familiar with Khloe's background than I am with Remi. If you have followed Remi for a while and you have thoughts on her videos and her content, I'd love to hear more about it, because again, I really wasn't familiar with her before going into this podcast, and I really did not feel like this podcast gave me a full view of who she was. I was really confused, and I don't know if Khloe's podcast is gonna last. I mean, it might, because she's famous enough so that, you know, she'll probably make money off of it, so they'll probably keep it going, but I really don't think it was very good. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of these topics or any other topics you'd like me to talk about. Really would love to start talking more about sort of like body image and healing and stuff like that. So yeah, anything else you'd like me to talk about on that topic, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I love to hear from you and I love your video suggestions. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and be sure you subscribe to my channel. Honestly, any engagement on my content really does help boost it in the algorithm so more people can get this message. If you want to check out my guided journals, I have the Recovering Pick Me Girl guided journal, which has a whole chapter in here about body image, because a lot of this like obsession with being skinny and trying to get skinny at all costs, very much pick me behavior. It's very much like conforming to what society tells us we're supposed to look like, regardless of what our bodies actually want us to look like. Also the Dark Feminine Energy guided journal, which is very great for, I mean, again, like stepping into your own power, learning your own sovereignty. I had a lot of positive feedback on both of these journals. So they're available on Amazon, details in the description box below, along with links to courses, masterclasses, and all my social media links. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.